The second church that Jesus addresses in this series of 7 messages in Revelation chapters 2 and 3 is to the church at Smyrna. And Jesus writes to them in verse 9, I know your works. You know, Jesus knows what's going on. He knows how we're doing and where we are. He knows what we're doing as we belong to Him. Jesus says, I know your works, tribulation, poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Jesus knows our works, and He knows our circumstances. And for this church at Smyrna, Jesus knew of the tribulation that they were enduring. He knew that they had great poverty. But then He adds as a parenthetical statement, but you are rich. I think we can understand the idea here that they are poor, and that must mean that they were poor in a physical or a material sense. As a congregation, they didn't have great resources, probably not a great meeting place, and not a great treasury or a lot of money from which to work and do the labor of the kingdom. And so this is a poor congregation, but Jesus adds then, but you are rich. They would be rich in their faith and in their works and in their determination to endure the difficulties that they were facing. And so He says, I also know the blasphemy of those who are making false claims in their spiritual life. And they're not being influenced by them. But they may be feeling the pressure of those people, because He says in verse 10, do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. He says, some of you will be thrown into prison for 10 days. Ultimately, He says, but you be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Jesus knows that this poor church is up against great obstacles. But Jesus indicates that poverty and tribulation is no indication that they are failing or that they're not faithful. Jesus praises this church and has no criticism. Not one word of criticism against this church, this small, poor church that is facing such opposition. They're just faithful to the Lord. And let's remember that the hard times that we face, whether they're financial or whether they come in the form of persecution and tribulation, are not indications of any weakness on our part, but rather may well be an indication that we are pleasing in the Lord's sight, suffering with Him, suffering for Him. The church at Smyrna brings a great message to us as they received a great message from Jesus Christ. Remember, verse 10 closes with this statement. He says, be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. The wording there, until death, is not suggesting until you live a long life and finally pass away at an advanced age. You be faithful to the point of death. Our loyalty to Christ is not dependent on the resources we possess. May God bless us to be faithful. NYCBibleTeacher.com is where you can find more opportunities to study with me, and I invite you to do that. Thank you.